So I guess we can start. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the organizing team and presenters, I warmly welcome you to this e-workshop on digitalization in rural and small town water services. So this e-workshop, it's so we have some housekeeping rules. Your microphone is currently off and should be off, or if you have questions, you can type them into the chat or wait until the Q&A moment. There will be always Q&A moments at the end of the presentations. The event is being recorded, and if you can't hear or see, please close and restart the meeting. So maybe a bit on the environment of this e-workshop. These are run-up e-workshops, and they head to the AGUASAN workshop, which is taking place this year in Martigny, Switzerland, in a hybrid format. So there are 3 workshops that are to prepare the participants for the AGUASAN workshop, and then in between there will be a remote co-creation. You can register for the workshop on this link, and these are the 3 workshops. We are now in the 2nd one. You could still sign up for the last one on data for water and disaster risk reduction. Oops, sorry. Yeah, so this is the AGUASAN hybrid event from 9 to 13 of October. There will be, the topics are the same of the e-workshops and also artificial intelligence, data management, and digitalized responses. So there will be, in the first part of the e-workshop, there will be 3 presentations. Then we will have breakout groups where you can join one and join the discussions. And in the end, we will have a wrap up. The whole e-workshop will take about 90 minutes. And I'd like to invite now the first speaker, Christoph Gorder from Charity Water.
Great, thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. It's good to see you all. Thank you for joining today. I'm excited to share a little bit of our experience in digitization of our programs and a little bit about Charity Water. So if you could just flip to the next slide. Just to start, a little context about Charity Water. We're an NGO based in the United States. We fund rural water supply programs around the world. We're funding programs in 22 countries currently. And most of this work is done by local partners that we fund. We raise our money from mostly individuals, mostly in the United States, although some of the funding comes from Europe. We've been around for about 16 years, and in that time, we have been able to provide clean and safe drinking water to almost 17 million people around the world. So if you can go to the next slide. You know, at its core, our mission is to address, you know, the 770 million people around the world who don't have access to clean water. So the idea is to get people who are drinking water like this into an improved situation, ideally drinking water like this, you know, so that we can achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. Now, this looks different in different parts of the world. If you think about that map that I just showed you of the 20 countries in Madagascar, it looks like this. You know, a borehole with a submersible pump and a solar array, which distributes the water through a gravity-fed system through a series of community tap stands. If you show the next, slide, you can see what that looks like in Madagascar. There we're funding Helvetas, which is a great Swiss organization who we partner with in a number of countries. If you go to the next slide, in Cambodia, it looks very different. These are household biosand filters. They cost about $65 per household. The water goes in the top. It's filtered through sand and a biological layer because there's a lot of surface water available. That that's the solution there. If you go to the next slide, in Ethiopia, for example, the solution looks like this. It's a hand pump with a shallow borehole, which might be about 50 meters. So the point is, around the world, the solutions are different for the different circumstances that we're encountering, the different hydrogeology, the different policy environments, the different concentrations of population. And we've worked very successfully for the last 16 years addressing this problem and funding basically new infrastructure around the world. And we do all the best practices of capacity building and advocacy and governance and everything that goes into sustainable water programs. But really, like, along the way, we realized that the problem we were trying to solve, which was to get people, build new infrastructure to help people get access to clean water, was one problem. But then there was this new problem out there, because as we started to go back and visit projects that we had financed, if you go to the next slide, we started to encounter situations kind of like this, where a project has been built, the best practices have been done, and the project failed for some reason. If you go to the next slide, there's nothing worse than getting to a community where they did have clean water, and now for some reason there's been a failure of the system and it's not working. And so what we realized was, in addition to the 770 million people around the world who don't have access to clean water, there's an additional 2 billion people who are counted as having clean water, who received some sort of improved water infrastructure, but they rely on a very fragile management system, and that's usually community managed. And the research shows that almost 25% of water systems in Africa might not be functioning on any given day. So you start to put this in perspective of, on top of the 770 million people that we're all focusing on, there might be another 300 or 400 million people who we're counting as having clean water today. We're counting them against the Sustainable Development Goals as achieved, and yet might not have clean water today. And if you go to the next slide, so our image is, that the situation looks like this, but in reality, if you go to the next slide, these people, their water system has failed, and they've had to go back to an unimproved water source, an unsafe water source, which is deadly. So we just started to understand a little bit more about the maintenance challenges that these communities were having. And actually, from a technical point of view, the maintenance, the technical side of maintenance is not that complicated, but actually, but the management, the social part of it is complicated. So here's a picture from Ethiopia. This is what goes into maintaining an Aphrodite hand pump. And so there's about 50 meters of PVC pipes. These are 3-meter sections that are glued together. And in order to repair it, what common breakdown that happens is the PVC will crack, let's say 10, 15 meters down, and you need to pull the whole 50 meters up. But in order to be able to do that and not break the PVC, because all of these sections are glued together, you need to organize, say 20 farmers. They need to take off the day off work. They need to be there when the technician gets there, and they all need to bring their sticks so that you can pull this thing out of the ground and then ultimately repair it and put it back. So technically, it's not that difficult. But if you can imagine trying to get all of these people organized in a rural community in Ethiopia, it starts to become difficult. And so as Charity Water was growing, and we were financing, first tens of thousands of projects, and now, over 100,000 projects, we started to say, like, this is, how are we going to keep track of these and support communities that run into problems that they can't fix themselves? And so we started to look around for technological solutions that we could use to help us. Because the current systems of sending somebody out on a motorbike to visit every single water project was just not scalable from a financial or from a logistical point of view. So we started to look into the Internet of Things. This is a digital revolution that's happened around the world over the course of the last 20 years, where devices are now connected to the internet. So now you can get a thermostat for your house to control the heat in your house, and then you can control it from your iPhone on the other side of the world. And so we started to look into this. But if you go to the next slide, our problem as an NGO is we had no R&D budget, and to develop something like this is really, expensive and time consuming. So we went to Google, if you can go to the next slide, and we pitched the idea to Google to build a remote sensor that would that could be used on hand pumps and connect hand pumps to the internet, and we would then be able to monitor them and dispatch mechanics when they broke. But the challenge is, the specifications are quite difficult. So we've got to have, a safe device because it's touching drinking water. We have to have it easy to install so that any mechanic can install it. You don't need electricity. You don't need to modify the hand pump. It needs to be able to, be very resilient. Very hot in the day, very, very cold at night. In some of these locations, and it has to be reliable in its measurements. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see normally you measure water that's flowing in a pressurized pipe, and so you have a little turbine. In the case of a hand pump, the water is splashing, it's chaotic. And in order to be able to do this, to be able to measure the water, we have to collect 160 readings per second. So that's about 13 million pieces of data per device per day, in order to be able to feed the algorithm, which can tell us accurately how much water is coming through it. So, and of course, we need it to be cheap, because if you're talking about a hand pump that's only costing $10,000, the sensor needs to be cheap. And so all of these design requirements made it actually quite difficult to design and build this device. So we put together a consortium.
2 minutes left.
Put together a consortium of great technology partners, and ultimately what we've ended up with is a sensor, if you go to the next slide, for the India Mark II hand pump. So it looks like this, fits on the hand pump. If you go to the next slide, this is what it looks like outside of the pump. You've got antennas on the side and a stack of sensors inside that dip down into the water. If you go to the next slide, you can see the circuit board. There's 8 pads, and they're measuring the level of water, 160 times per second. It's very easy to install. If you go to the next slide, this is a stop motion of the installation. It takes about 10 minutes. The mechanics require no special tools, really, and very, very little training. I mean, any village mechanic who's working on pumps today, you could show them how to do this, and they can install it from there. So this installation process happens, takes 10 minutes, and all of a sudden, this remote location, this piece of infrastructure is now connected to the internet, beaming information to a manager in his office. Like, this is Bruce in Rwanda, and what Bruce sees now is a dashboard which looks like this. If you slip to the next slide, where he can see all of his hand pumps. He can see the ones that are performing well and the ones that aren't performing well, and he can zoom in. If you go to the next slide, you can see the performance of it over time and get all the information immediately. So it's been really a revolution. These devices are performing very, very well. And this is just the beginning. So, right now we're working in a very simple application, which is like, if this hand pump is not working, let's dispatch a mechanic. But in the future, we really think it has a lot of potential for working on incentives. If you imagine a connected hand pump sends the data up to the cloud. In the cloud, there's a smart contract. The smart contract says if a certain condition is met, if the pump is working, it will pay, automatically using a mobile wallet, a local mechanic on the ground. And so you can imagine how in the future a pay for results model could really be powered by this type of IoT device, so that a mechanic like this is incentivized to do preventative maintenance, respond quickly to breakdowns, and help keep water flowing, so that ultimately our vision for the world, if you flip to the next slide, is real, that we're not taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And our technology now is out there in hundreds of locations, and we're rolling it out as quickly as we can. But it's been a long journey, and finally we've had some success in developing a technology which is stable enough to scale in the future, and hopefully will become mainstream as things progress. I look forward to discussing more with you. Happy to take questions, but I'll see you all in the break room in a few minutes. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Christoph. So you have now the chance to ask questions to Christoph. It's more like quick understanding questions. We have more time in the breakout room for in-depth discussion. But does anyone wants to take the mic? So there I can see a question by Carola Benziger.
Yes, hi. I have two questions. One is like, does the sensor need power supply? And if so, what is it? Like how is it the power provided? And the second question, how exactly is it connected to the internet? And how do you do it if you don't have network?
Great questions. The first one is it has a lithium-ion battery in it that will last 10 years. And so this is one of the key design components, was how do you design a technology which doesn't require constantly changing the battery? So currently it'll last for 10 years, which is, you know, a huge advantage. It communicates with the internet via GSM network, so just your local cell phone network. What we found is that where there are people, generally, there's going to be a mobile phone network. So in Uganda, for example, we have installed hundreds of them without pre-testing mobile phone networks at the location, and we're finding connectivity at more than 90% of the locations. So, of course, this is not the solution for the most remote locations, but we're finding that it's working in more than 90% of the locations.
Okay, maybe Elizabeth also has a question, and then we move forward to the next presentation.
Thank you for your presentation. I have two questions. One, you mentioned that it is connected with smart contracts. Does it mean that it uses blockchain technology? And then number two, is it able to detect like a particular part that is not working, or it just detects that the hand pump is not working?
So on the smart contract, we've done it on a pilot basis. We've done one experiment in Nepal on an earlier generation sensor. The technology was actually a little bit of a challenge at that time. This was about 3 years ago. Now we're about to pilot it using this technology, which is much more advanced and much more reliable. So I think it will be much more successful. We're not using blockchain. We're just using a ledger. So I think for our application, blockchain is probably a little bit too complicated, but we will just use a regular ledger. But that is the idea. The idea is we would use blockchain in the future if you really scaled up. On your second question, sorry, remind me what it was?
My second question was, does it detect that they a particular
which part is breaking?
Which part has broken? Yes.
Yeah, it does not. What it detects is the decline in water flow. So you know, it's monitoring. It uses artificial intelligence to understand the performance of that specific location, because each location is a little bit different. For example, a school doesn't pump maybe on Saturdays and Sundays. So the device itself understands the performance of that particular location, and then will detect any anomalies from what it considers normal for that particular location. So it will not tell you that, you know, it's the bearing or the bushing or whatever that's failing. What it'll tell you is that there's a lower production of water, which is either lower, you know, which either happens very quickly or very slowly.
Thanks for these interesting questions and answers. I'm sorry I have to interrupt here, and would like to invite the other questions to be raised in the breakout rooms. So our next presentation will be by Aina from Helvetas Madagascar. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Lucas. Can you hear me? Okay. Hi, everybody. I give you a presentation about one of our system of distribution water, automatic water kiosk that we use in one of our sites. Next slide, please. So I start with context, Helvetas Madagascar support construction of drinking water supply systems. And until now, we use public standpipes and volumetric payment principle. That means water bills are paid monthly. The system is managed by a private company. We work with private company actually. The municipality delegate management of their water supply to this to this company private through PPP. And our system now is that each standpipe is entrusted to a fountain operator who receives a percentage of the water sold, for example, 10 or 20%. Next slide, please. So what are the issues about this approach and about this system? First, operator fountain refuse to pay the water bills. They use money for his own private activities. Secondly, there is limited availability of fountain operator because to be fountain operator is not their principal job. They are mainly farmers or grocers, for example. And this results in long queues of water resources. And this is also reinforced by lack of motivation on the fountain operator to remain permanently at the water points or to maintain standpipes. They have as consequences no sustainability of the system. So next slide. So we proposed the automatic kiosk as a solution. Why? Because this system we don't need for fountain operator for this system. Also, we have less water loss during pouring. This means that the system is more profitability. Users can take water at any time because they don't depend of the fountain operator. And finally, this system improves collection rates because private operator is paid in advance. Users must purchase code in advance before taking water. We work with Nanoe. Nanoe is a social enterprise. You provide electricity since 2017 with small scale solar system supply for 4 or 6 households called nano networks. The payment is by mobile phone, and the business model, two franchises of small businessmen called Nanoe entrepreneurs from villages. Nanoe secure the payment and provide technical support. who purchase also access to a service tailored to their needs by preparation via mobile phone. And until now, more than 2,000 households using Nanoe service. And why with Nanoe? Nanoe is active in the same area as Helvetas, in north of Madagascar. They also have skills in electronics and remote payment, as we see. They have developed their own electronic devices, and they have willingness to find a way to use the electricity, for example, to operate pump and the mechanism. And now we had already doing the phase 1 of projects as development of module. In 2021, we tested it in 1 villages for 2 kiosks. We monitor it of the device and for the feedback to the users. The mechanism is easy to use. But we see that if water is not clean, the solenoid valve clogs easily. And secondly, the control box is a little bit fragile. And now, this year, we have to do the phase 2. We are in progress to install 2 standalone kiosks in 2 villages by establishment of joint venture with water provider, private society, and follow up user satisfaction. Donc, as you see in the image, we change the control box, and also Nanoe change the water filtration to protect the valve. Finally, for the next steps, we have to validate the joint venture business plan and to install in all our stand pipes. Secondly, we have to determine the cost and price of the module. It depends on the interesting for the private operators. And finally, we have to implement the system in our all region of implementation. So thank you, and I hope that the presentation will interest you.
Thanks a lot, Aina, for this presentation. Are there any quick questions? Once again, we have like 5 minutes for quick questions to Aina for further discussions. We have time in the breakout room after our last presentation. You can raise your hand or you can open your mic.
There is one question in the chat, Lucas. So Amanda says, apologies, I don't have an active microphone. However, I have some questions. How is the water quality monitored and maintained? And is there any other water sources that makes people lack of motivation to take the water from the kiosk?
Aina, can you answer these questions?
Yes. For the quality monitoring, is that the first question? So the private operator make systematically two tests of water every year, and Helvetas with municipality and the watch direction, regional direction, have the system to validate the result of this test, water test. Our challenge is that the society which can do the test, Institut Pasteur, is so far of the state of system, thinking system. And second, can you repeat the second question, please? Or
are there any other water sources that make people have a lack of motivation to take the water from the kiosk?
Yes, because the system, the users paid the system, the services, they don't have the motivation to pay water. So there are individual drill or driver around the site with and people, users prefer to use this type of source or water source that kiosk.
So thanks again, Niana, for this presentation and question and answers. We have more time for discussion in the breakout rooms. Now I want to invite our last speaker, Kennedy Wanyama. He will talk about water kiosks in Uganda.
Thank you very much, everyone, and it's very good. I'm delighted to meet all of you here. So thank you, Lucas, for the introduction. My name is Kennedy Wanyama. I work with the Get Water Uganda, which is a not-for-profit organization promoting implementation of water in Uganda. And more especially, we have implemented the gravity-driven membrane water filtration water kiosks in Eastern Uganda in 2 districts of Busia and Namaingo. And the slide here in front of you is a slide which shows a design of how our kiosk looks like, where we are pumping water from Lake Victoria using a solar water pump to the kiosk system, where the digital monitoring system is installed in the picture where you see a woman dispensing water. Next slide, please. Lucas, can you hear me? Thank you. So we have been able to install in partnership with Eawag, Sandec, several water kiosks, and also managed to install water ATMs on a few. And here is just a short video for you to see how the system works in a few seconds if I proceed. Lucas, can you play it? Thank you. So our experience with this monitoring system. Lucas, did you manage to play?
It played on my screen. I don't know, maybe.
Yes, also here.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much. So with this digital monitoring system on our water kiosks, our experience in Uganda is now, our experience in Uganda is from 2020 when we installed this. Of course, this system is not our own system. It is owned by Sandec, and Sandec in Uganda has been there for about since 2013. But in Africa, they have been able to also install almost in 9 African countries, and they have over 1,000 systems installed. In Eastern Uganda, we installed 3, and the 3 systems are described in the pictures below. The first picture on your left is in a district called Namaingo, in a place called Lugala. The second picture is also in system is also in Namaingo district, in a place called Bulundira. And then the other monitoring system is in Busime, in a district called Busia, and these are in Eastern Uganda. Move next. So the system works in a way that every client is able to have a token, and it works with internet. So once the system has the internet, everybody is able to view it through the dashboard. So from the system, you are able to see every transaction, how water is dispensed. So what happens that on this system, we have administrators, for example, at Water Uganda, where money is sent on a system. And when money is sent on this system, the kiosk operator is able to receive this money and distribute it to clients' tokens, whereby clients are able to access this water on their own without any assistance of anyone. So it works in a way that you must be able to have cash. You pay to the kiosk operator, who then dispatches this money on your token, and then you are able to access water any time of the day that you want. And what happens here is that every transaction that happens on this system, for example, when money is being transacted, it is recorded on the dashboard. When water is being dispensed, it is recorded on the dashboard. And you are able to view all these services on the dashboard, not only at a local level, but every stakeholder that is involved. For example, Eawag, Sandec at Switzerland, they are able to view how water is dispensed per day. Water Uganda is able to view without traveling to the kiosk on the dashboard. The district support team is also able to view. And here is just an example of how the dashboard looks like on this monitoring system. For example, the first graphs on top, the system is able to show you how the system is performing in terms of numbers of liters being dispensed per month and the amount of money being collected per month. And also, it's able to calculate for you to see how many liters are being dispensed each and every day and how much money is being collected per day on every system. This system also has a very good performance. For example, with our experience before we installed this system, the collection of revenue was very low. But after installation of this system, we see that there was an increase by 350%. which is really very good comparable to the previous, where money was misappropriated and not accounted for properly. There is also increased transparency on the system, since everybody is able to view what is happening. It saves time and resources. You don't have to travel there and see what is happening, and you're able to monitor it online. There is also reduced misappropriation of funds. Like previously, we used to have money in the hands of people who would manage the kiosk, and they would really fail to account for how much have they been able to collect per day, how much have they spent on maintenance of the system. But this time, the system is clear. It records how much money has been collected, and you are able to bring accountability to that. Also, when it comes to reporting, it's very easy since it summarizes everything and a report can be generated. There is also increased trust in the system, and also it has built a lot of relationships. So everybody from the lowest level to the all, even for different stakeholders, there is trust. And also for easy monitoring, I mentioned this already. I don't have to travel, for example, from my office to go and see at a water kiosk how much water has been dispensed, to see how much money has been collected. This can be monitored while I'm seated at office. And also accessibility of water was isn't in a way that previously, before the digital monitoring system, we used to have a kiosk operator who would go at a water kiosk, open in the morning, and maybe in the afternoon he closes. People could come, they want to access water and nobody is there. But after installation of this system, now water is accessed 24/7. You are free to go at any time that you want. But
And
also on the other side, thank you, Lucas. But also on the other side, after installation of this system, we also see that there has been a drop of dispensing of water or overall consumption of water. Why does this come? Because in the communities where we are serving, in the rural communities, people are very vulnerable. And so those who cannot afford money to put on their tokens, they have to look for other options. And also the other hand is that the system is a bit expensive. The investment cost is high to approximately $5,000 US. So it's not easy on that side. Next. Next slide, Lucas. Thank you, Lucas. And so we summarize this in 3 points. And we say that for us, in able to look at a sustainable business model for rural water services, a water ATM is a key feature here. It's a key factor, since it has to do with the increase of revenues, transparency, and access to water, and it facilitates remote monitoring. The other point is also the overall water consumption. We see in our daily operation system that it decreased. And so this also is not a positive point, but it's negative in a way that people have to look for other alternative way of accessing safe water, or they might also opt to go to unsafe water sources. But also, besides the water ATM, to have an overall sustainability and management of this kind of services, this is accompanied by good and strong leadership, localized operations and maintenance, and also we look at external support from experts. For example, Sandec comes in, the local government comes in, and then Water Uganda to support the local people to manage this kind of model. So I want to say thank you very much, everyone that has listened to me, and I look forward to the next steps of the questions if they're there. I also want to refer you to our link. Maybe Lucas, next slide, just to refer them to the links and also the QR code. You can check our system about the GDM kiosks on the Eawag website. That's the website is there to read more information about this system and also the QR code online. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Kennedy. Are there any short questions to this presentation? Is there anything in the chat? No.
That's a short comment, short comment from my side, if I may.
Yeah.
I think that's an incredibly interesting example what you show, and it also shows the dilemma in which we are when we make it, so to say, we commercialize the water business, yeah, and we have better control, if you will, so can better monitor it. But on the other hand, it becomes more expensive for people, and so it's not 100% what we want to deliver to people, isn't it? We want to make water accessible, and now in a way it becomes even less accessible with this system because it's more expensive.
Kennedy, you want to react on that comment? You have to unmute.
Sorry, I did not get the question very clearly.
Hello. Yeah, my question is it's really, I think you showed it very nicely that there is a dilemma now between providing access to water, but make it more expensive at the same time. So in this way, it's less access to water, yeah, because it costs more money. So that's, did you think about combining the advantages of this well-monitored system and still make water better accessible? Is there a way to lower the price for people?
Yes, I want to respond to it in two ways. And one, yes, we are aware that more so when it comes to the most vulnerable, for example, the elderly, what has been agreed, for example, at our water systems that we have installed with these kind of systems, the committees that are in charge of the water systems have sat down and agreed, and they are able to identify the vulnerable people from within their community where the system is supplying. And these vulnerable people have been given a special offer to be able to access water. And the reason is that now the system is able to collect enough money for maintenance. So it's not a problem also to help the needy people to have access for water for free because they were losing a lot of money previously, but now they are able to collect more money for maintenance and operation. And so they can at least dispense some water for free for the vulnerable people. And also the primary schools, school-going children who are within these communities also have access to this water for free.
Thank you very much. That was
maybe one short last question by Augustine. Thank you for this question and the answer as well. Augustine, can open your mic.
Yes, thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. It's always nice to see the digitalization of water resources, especially in developing countries in Africa. I think my first question has already been answered some way, somehow. But I think at the start of the presentation, when you are showing a diagram of your system, it entails, I think, membrane filtration, if I'm right.
Yes.
Okay, because the question is, membrane filtration, as obviously you may know, there's different membrane filtration processes, and some of them are very expensive. So I don't know if you have a particular type of membrane filtration, if it's only to filter particulate matter and not microbiological matter, because if it's about microbiological matter, then it can be quite expensive. And when you're looking at sustainability in developing countries, when you're looking at technology, it needs to be sustainable, and we need to look at the costs of maintenance and how the people themselves can be able to manage these resources for a very long time. And my second question is quite straightforward about the management of these facilities, because most time in Africa, we have these WASH committees that normally manages water resources. And in the WASH committees, we have community leaders, the chief, to try to ensure, to enforce the rule. So in your management committee, some way, somehow, did you involve these community leaders, or it's something that is quite centralized by by the water management division in Uganda? I guess my question was clear. Thank you.
Thanks for this question. Kennedy, please, can you give a very short answer to the second question? For the first question, I welcome you to go to Kennedy's breakout room, because as it is a very specific question, but maybe a quick answer about the second question from your side, Kennedy, then we can proceed to the breakout rooms.
Thank you very much for the question. And I don't know whether I got it clearly about the kiosk committees that support the operation and maintenance of these water systems. I think maybe his question was about how they are enacted and maybe probably supported in terms of operation and maintenance. These local committees, first of all, I want to say that they are appointed by the local people, the beneficiaries themselves, the people who come to fetch water from the water kiosk from within the community, and they are supported by the government from the village level, sub-county level, and the district level. And of course, they receive technical support. They have received all sorts of trainings, and the trainings we have offered them in terms of cleaning of the intake, repair of the solar water pump, cleaning of the tanks, and the general operation and maintenance. So they have all the skills, and the skills have been localized. And so they find it very easy to operate and maintain the system. They do not need the support from any external expert when it comes to the basic knowledge on operation and maintenance. So these are local people who have been trained and given the skills to manage their own system, and including the collections of the funds, the money that they collect from these water kiosks. They have been able to select signatories. They opened up a bank account, and they are able to keep their own money in the bank, and they are able also to spend when it comes to maintenance and operation of the system.
Thanks for these answers. So I'm happy to hear that the discussions are lively. We have time now in the next 20 minutes in breakout rooms to deepen these discussions. So you're welcome to join one of those breakout rooms. You're free to choose wherever you want to go. There will be from.
Yes, if that's all right for you, Lucas, I can share my screen so we can see the Padlet at the same time.
Sure.
Perfect. So on the comment regarding the presentation, I think everyone agreed that it's a very, urgent discussion we need to have, because these solutions are mostly needed, and it's a transparent and efficient system that has a lot of potential. When we talk the pros, it's important to talk about the cons as well. And it's an expensive system. At least at the initial investment, it's quite expensive, as it was presented by Kennedy. Of course, what is important to highlight is that it can be recovered in the future. So the revenue increased quite a lot in a short period already. Then we also mentioned it was important to see as well the potential to adapt to climate change and its impact on water resources by being able to monitor more precisely how much water is being used, how much water is available, and take into account this aspect. And it's also very important when using such approach to ensure the local ownership. When we move to what experiences people had in the group about digitalization in smaller rural water services, we didn't have so much time to discuss different experiences, but what came out and what was discussed in general was the fact that for many population, in the case, for example, of Uganda, someone explained that 3/4 of the population in the region would be considered the most vulnerable. And how do you ensure they can afford such services? which seems a bit difficult. The feasibility was limited in that sense. And if water is provided for free for the most vulnerable, what if the 3/4 of the population are the most vulnerable? So how to differentiate the different levels of vulnerability and who can access for free and who should not? And here, as an answer, the idea of like really raising awareness on what are the benefits of such services and really bring the value to it. For example, the health benefits of having safe drinking water. When it comes to the challenges and open questions, question came out about vandalism, if it was experienced. And no, it was not experienced. But one point that was raised as very important at the beginning is to engage the community and explain why this solution is here, because there is a problem at first and what is the problem. So then there is acceptance from the community. A question was also asked about the price of the quantity per quantity of water. How is that set up? So the idea was that at the beginning, in that case, there were community meetings where the consumers and all the stakeholders are invited to the table to discuss what is, the willingness to pay from the users. Also to present the investment that was done in the water system and the water kiosk, to explain a bit, the rationale behind the price. And then at the end, provide opportunity for the consumers to discuss a monthly fee. The costs at the beginning for the investment, some people had question about that. It was presented, I think, and it's about $5,000, but that's for the water kiosk, the water ATM. And then questions were raised about the ownership of the system. So are they public-private partnership that exists to support, let's say, the investment cost that is quite high at the beginning and make it more affordable? Is there any way to engage more local actors in that sense? And we were informed basically that the water ATM are actually entirely managed by local actors when we talk about the day-to-day management. But it's important to take into account that at the beginning, in that case, it was not a private business at the beginning. It was more a donation to the community. And then they realized the importance to have a business model linked to the use of digitalization in that context. So the technical aspects for the water ATM are mostly managed by Water Uganda, and the local government is mostly also in charge of that. So there is strong management at the local level. And again, something that came back as really a main challenge raised by Kennedy is it's an expensive system. Usually when digital systems are very expensive at the beginning, and how to deal with that. So if anyone wants to add something here, I think it was pretty much everything.
Yes, thanks for this feedback.
So everybody can see it?
Yes.
Yeah, so we were a small group of persons discussing first was discussing on the scale of the pilot phase, and then we clarified that we tried first in one small village, and now for the second version of the device, we started in two different villages, but small scale water supply system. And the idea is now to upscale in bigger supply systems and replacing the public tap stands with those automatic devices to solve the main issue, which is the payment of water, regular payment of water. One discussion was the same as the other group, how to be sure that most vulnerable people are not excluded with this system. And there we shared our approach to identify first all the vulnerable families, and then to discuss with all the community and local authorities to define the price of water. And usually we try to find an affordable price of the water that ensure also the financial sustainability of the business for the private operator, but without excluding people. And so that's our main idea, because we try to ensure that the service is maintained based on the payment of the service. And also, maybe the last discussion was technical issues regarding the payment, and people in Madagascar, they are I used to pay with the digital money and do different things with their phones, which are not especially smartphones. And also if there's any difficulties regarding maybe the codes or other technical issues, the electricity provider has specific technicians that they can deploy on the field and react quite fast to any problems, issues. So that's the most main insight from our group. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing your insights. And then I invite Regula to give us an update about the charity water breakout session.
You're muted still, Regula.
Yeah, sorry for that. Yeah, regarding the questions, there were quite a lot of questions around the operationability of the sensors in the hand pumps. Also, if there are options to measure other parameters, and how far the development is, how soon it would be available for organizations, or if it would be available for other organizations. And yes, probably in about 2 to 3 years. But Charity Water is not planning this as a profitable venture, so might provide them to organizations that are focused on working in the sector of monitoring and operation. And looking into other organizations with experience on digitalization, there was not so much activity in the group. Some insights that this initiative is very early stage. A lot of things are going on, but it's difficult technically to implement. There were some experiences with electric hand pumps and pumps for piped water, but an insight that implementation is still challenging. So digitalization does not solve all the problem. It's a problem of the system around. Technology as well, human systems, but also supply chains. And to really solve the problems, one has to work more in a holistic way, integrating technology and the human systems. And also here, vandalism has not been an issue.
Okay, many thanks. Well, I have the honor to also close this session. So thanks everyone who made this e-workshop possible. Thanks for joining, thanks for attending. If you have any follow-up question, you're welcome to contact us via email. We're also able to connect you with the presenters directly. Again, one last time. So this is the run-up e-workshop for the AGUASAN workshop, which is taking place in hybrid format in October this year. You're able to register at this link. And there is this third e-workshop on data for water disaster risk reduction on July 13th, where you can still register. So again, thanks a lot to all the participants, all the presenters, and have a good evening, afternoon, wherever you stay.
Good evening and good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Samira.
Bye. 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 Bye.
Bye-bye.
Did
There
everyone
was...
stop the recording?
Yeah.